This is the xTool M2. It is a brand new laser that it combines not only a laser, but a color printer. So there's a ton you can do with this. Today, we're going to engrave tumblers. There is a rotary attachment you can put in here to engrave all types of cylindrical objects. So I'm going to walk you through what that means, how it works. Let's create some projects together and answer some common questions. Hey there, I'm Sarah, you're watching Creative Ramblings. In this video, we are going to cover how to engrave cylindrical items with the M2. So that includes changing up the laser, I'll show you what that means in a moment, installing the rotary attachment. We're going to cover exactly what types of items you can engrave and the limitations there, and then I'm going to answer some common questions. If at any point I have missed something or you have additional questions, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to chat with you. If you are brand new to lasers, you don't have one yet, and you're a little lost trying to figure out what you want to get, I really want you to consider joining my YouTube membership program. Just hit that join right below this video. I have a 9-video course in there all about lasers from the very beginning, like what is a laser, walk you through absolutely everything you need to know, and it's available exclusively to members. So if you hit that join button, you'll learn all about it and see how you can take advantage of that course. So first things first, let's set up this M2 to engrave cylindrical items. So this laser is fairly small. It is not that tall at all. There is no riser attachment for this. However, you can still engrave a tumbler in here up to 100 millimeters in diameter. And you do this by switching up the laser so it engraves horizontally instead of vertically. That is super easy to do. This laser has magnets, so we're just unplugging the cord, putting in the little attachment that comes with the rotary, and then putting the laser back in. Incredibly simple. Once we have that laser switched around, then you can install the rotary. This works with the RA3 Lite. It is a special attachment just for the M2. I am not going to walk you through a full setup because I found that it was just really easy and really straightforward. When you get the box, there's going to be a QR code on it. Scan that code. It's going to walk you through everything, step by step. Once you get it installed, this is what it's going to look like. And now we're ready to start some projects. The most popular item to engrave with a rotary attachment is a tumbler. So something like this that you can add a design to, you can drink out of. These are great. So a couple of things you need to know. Your item can be up to 100 millimeters in diameter. You should always know the difference between perimeter and diameter. Diameter goes across the opening, perimeter or circumference goes around. You can use either of those measurements, and I'll show you what I mean when we get into the software. You can engrave different types of tumblers, so those that are irregular shaped, wider on the top, narrower on the bottom. You can do straight-sided. You can do the kinds that are big on the top, small on the bottom, kind of like the popular Stanleys or Yetis. What you do need to be able to do is take the handle off your tumbler if it has one. Neither of these have handles, but a lot of the larger ones do have handles that you can unscrew. So make sure you take that handle off or you engrave something without a handle. In addition to tumblers, you can do a lot of different cylindrical items. So we're going to engrave a ring together in a little bit. You can actually engrave on the inside of the ring or the outside. You can do a champagne glass, a wine glass, a vase, a glass ornament. All kinds of different items that you want to engrave all the way around can work with this rotary. When you go through the setup of your rotary, it walks through a bunch of different examples of how to use each accessory to hold different items. So let's walk through a project start to finish together.
You're going to start by selecting the jaw type. So I've got these on here. They just stick in with magnets. We're going to put the whole thing inside the tumbler and then insert the chuck into the rotary. You can adjust the leveler on the bottom and the tumbler is ready to go. We can head to the software. This is the main screen for xTool Studio. My M2 is connected up on the top, and I need to change this over to a rotary attachment. That's what we just installed. So the canvas is going to change a little bit. We're already installed, so I can X off this little warning on the top here. The next thing I want to do is choose my material. This is what I had used last time. We're actually going to change the settings a little bit. I wasn't happy with the recommended settings, so through some tests, I've got some different ones. So I will show you that in a moment. Now, there's two different processes here. If I hover over this, it's going to tell me that normal process is if your cylinder is straight. With modeling process, you can use this for a tapered tumbler. However, the tumbler that I put in does not taper greatly. It's very, very slight towards the bottom, and the graphic I'm going to put on here is towards the top. So we are just going to go with normal process. And we used the inner grip, and it does give you visuals. This seriously just makes it so easy for you. So we're going to choose inner grip, and our, not diameter, we measured perimeter. So diameter is the distance across like the bottom or the top, and perimeter is all the way around. So I measured perimeter. We're going to put that in. And I am taking the perimeter of the largest part because that is where the majority of the engraving is going to take place. And then we're going to auto measure. This moves over to a place where we can measure. If I want to measure on a thicker part or a thinner part, I can move it over a little bit, but I actually really like where it's at right here. We're going to hit measure. All right, now let's bring in a design. I'm again just using something really simple here. You can get really fancy with these and do all kinds of things, but I am just doing something very basic. Now I measured my tumbler to determine what size I want my graphic. And I want this to be about 70 millimeters tall. And then we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. So over here on the right, let's move this down a little bit. This is a view of what your tumbler looks like. So right here in the system, this is the top of your tumbler that is facing the roof of the laser. And it is going to rotate. So if I take this and put it right here, it is going to engrave kind of over the top. This tumbler does not have a handle. It doesn't have a logo. It really doesn't matter where I put this. If you have something with a handle or a logo, you may want to use painter's tape and mark off exactly where you want that piece to go so that when we come down to framing, you can make sure that it frames exactly in the right spot. But for this particular one, it doesn't matter. That's why I chose to do this one. We do have a gray area that it cannot laser on. So I am going to move this as close to that gray area as I can because I really want this image to be close to the top. Now for settings. I have bumped this power and speed up quite a bit and gotten great results. I am using a powder-coated tumbler from MakerFlow. I will link those down below, and they engrave beautifully. So power of 90, speed of 200, 200 lines per centimeter. We have the option to do unidirectional or bidirectional. Bidirectional is faster because the laser is going to fire on both passes. Again, a nice little graphic that's helpful, so change it over to bidirectional. So we can do a couple things to see if we've got this right. The first is to preview, and this is just going to show you what it looks like on a generic tumbler, not necessarily your tumbler. So here it shows me that I have it really close to the top, which isn't really the case. What's going to help us here is framing. So let's hit framing and then go over to the machine. So it's definitely not going all the way to the top, but I'm getting pretty close. I can change the jaw grips. So back up here, when I add the tumbler, I can actually use some different grips so I can get closer to the top. But this is just where we're starting today. I'm gonna get a really good engrave on this. So I'm ready to go. So I'm gonna hit process. Couple things you wanna check. I have my vent hooked up to my smoke purifier and then vented out a window. So make sure that you are hooked up appropriately. Everything's ready to go, and then we can hit start and hit start on the machine. Looks like we're gonna take about 13 minutes to do this. Engraving is done. I can just loosen the chuck on top and pull the tumbler off. After engraving, there is going to be some soot on there, so it needs to be cleaned up. On these tumblers, I really like LA's Totally Awesome or some kind of mild cleaner. I just put this on a paper towel and wipe it off, and this is going to look fantastic. You can see I got nice crisp lines with those settings. Again, these are MakerFlow tumblers. They're linked down in the description. They engrave beautifully every time. Next, let's engrave a skinny, straight-sided tumbler. So I've got the same grips as before, but I'm going to move them to a different set of holes. And with the magnets, it makes it so easy. So I'm going to insert the chuck into the tumbler, tighten it really well, and then put the whole thing into the rotary. Adjust that leveler on the bottom, and I'm going to use a little level on top just to make sure we're all squared away here, and then we can go to the software. We're back in the software. We are going to add a graphic to a straight-sided tumbler. So I've brought in this B graphic here. It is set to engrave. Up on top, I've got the normal process. We are on the extended jaw inner grip. Let's enter the perimeter. So back to my graphic, I know that I want this to be about 130 millimeters. So I'm going to line it up in the center. This is straight-sided, no handle, so it really doesn't matter where I put it on here. I just want to get it kind of close to the top. So let's frame this out and kind of see what this looks like. And I need to do a little playing around with it because that is too far down, so we're going to move it up as high as it can go here. Frame it out again until I get the exact right spot. My settings are going to be the same as the powdered coated tumbler. This is a laserable skinny tumbler from MakerFlow, and these settings should work just fine. So we are ready to go. Let's process this.
So those were examples of a tapered tumbler and a straight-sided tumbler. Both of those and most of the tumblers I use are from MakerFlow. They make excellent items, anywhere from small little cans to 40-ounce tumblers. I will link them down below. Really high quality, good stuff in a ton of colors. I do want you to know that myself and most other creators go through a lot of test cups, and we have a lot of fails before we bring these videos to you. I know I do, because I want to try everything and tell you what works and what doesn't. So this is one of my test cups, and I had this all set up to do a full wrap on here, and I tried to get it so that I could engrave all the way up to the top. You've noticed in the last two projects that we did that there is kind of a non-working area right here where you can't engrave all the way up to the top, because if you do, the laser will actually end up hitting the rotary and then it'll damage it and then it won't work. So I was trying to grasp this with the different attachments in a way that I could grave to the top. I thought I had it. I got about to here and the whole thing just fell off in my laser. In that situation, I had a warning on my computer that told me this started beeping. I was able to shut it off. There was no damage done anywhere. But I was kind of bummed. So I haven't figured out, using the items that come with the rotary attachment, how to engrave all the way to the top. There are some third-party attachments that I have used with different xTool rotaries before that have allowed that to happen. So I'm going to keep working on that. But just know that I do a lot of testing to bring you the best tumblers and the best tutorials that I can.
Let's talk about the modeling process. This is the other option when you're choosing a process for your rotary. You're going to use this when your tumbler is irregularly shaped, and it just walks you through the process. So we are going to mark a high point and a low point, and then the machine is going to measure a whole bunch of columns in between so you get a really accurate depth map and can easily engrave over an irregular surface.
Tumblers are very popular, and if you have the M2, you're probably going to be doing your share of tumblers. There are other things you can do. So really anything cylindrical. So if you have a vase, maybe one that is narrow on the top and wide on the bottom, maybe a pretty ceramic vase, you can engrave that. You can do ornaments, glass ornaments. That's going to be great for the holiday season. You can do rings. So let's go through and engrave a ring together.
This is a stainless steel ring, and you can mark stainless steel with a diode laser. So I'm going to use the grips that are specifically made for rings. I'm going to make this really small, put the ring over the top, and then I can open them back up until it's nice and snug. Then just like with the tumblers, we insert the whole chuck into the rotary, and we're ready to go. Let's walk through the process of engraving a ring. So we just put the ring into the M2. It is on the jaw. I know it's a stainless steel ring, so I've got my material selected here. And we are going to choose the ring aluminum pillar. Let's enter the perimeter of that ring. We are at about 75 millimeters. And I am going to auto measure this. Now this part takes a little bit of work because I need to make sure that that laser is perfectly aligned with the ring. So I'm looking at my machine, I've got my software here. We're gonna knock this down to about a 10 millimeter distance, and I'm just gonna move this over until it is lined up. That's a little too far. Let's go down to 1. So that looks about right, so let's hit measure. And I'm going to be able to tell right away if this actually hits the ring. Ooh, we are a little off. So I am going to go back and remeasure because that was not quite right. Perfection. Ready to move on from there. So I've got my design lined up here. It is a really small design. It should wrap all the way around the ring. And I am going to set my own settings here. Next up is framing. That's the button in the bottom right corner. For some reason, my screen record didn't work for this, but we're going to hit framing, and the laser is going to physically move inside of the machine and is going to draw out a box. And this takes time and practice because you have to do it until that laser is perfectly on the ring. It can be tedious. I haven't figured out exactly how to make this work faster other than just trying it over and over. But once we've got it framed, we can move on. Okay, after trying framing a couple times, I switched out this design to something a little smaller because that ring is very small and the heart was just a little too big to wrap around. So I switched it out to this little flower design, and now I can frame it. And the framing is perfect. So since we switched it out, I just need to go back and set these parameters, and let's process. One more feature I want to point out is this little button in the bottom left called Enable Monitoring. This is going to pop up in your processing screen. This is a live view of what's happening inside your laser. Some people may use this to monitor what's going on from a different room. I highly recommend you never leave your laser. You never know what might happen, and it happens very fast.
The M2 is a very versatile machine. You can laser cut, you can print and cut, you can make stickers, you can make wood designs for wall signs. There's so much you can do. And now we can add the rotary and just do all kinds of tumblers, ornaments, glasses, vases, all that kind of stuff. My thoughts on this: the rotary, specifically the RA3 Lite, is incredibly easy to use. As someone who has used a lot of different rotary attachments from multiple brands, this was by far the easiest. Specifically having those magnetic pieces that attach to the chuck, not having to screw everything in, and then the way that the chuck itself slides into the rotary attachment, incredibly easy. If this is your first rotary, just know that you've got it good. This thing operates so much nicer than other ones that I have. I also really like how this connects to the machine. It runs along the side and then plugs into the back here. There's no inner plug on the inside, so that's really nice. This flippable laser here. This piece where the laser is focusing outward instead of down, that is really cool. There's one other machine that does that. That is the We Create Vista. That was the first one on the market to kind of have that flippable laser. So you don't have to have a riser. You can just have something very shallow and you can still do your tumbler in here. That is great. That means this is not going to take up a ton of space in your craft room. One of the things that I wish we could do with this is utilize that camera to help with positioning of items. So there is a camera, there's actually two cameras in this machine, but for this process, I wish we could use this top camera to somehow help position what was in the machine. It takes a lot of practice, right? A lot of repetitions to really understand where you're placing your item. Once you get the hang of it, it does get easier, but the first couple times it does take a couple repetitions to get it right. With framing, it's not saying that you're going to mess up a whole bunch of cups, but I have to frame everything a couple of times to make sure I have it in the exact right spot. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is the M2 is a phenomenal hobby laser. This is a 10-watt diode in a fairly compact machine. This is going to be great if you want to create tumblers for your friends and family, maybe some gifts, some personal items. But at 10 watts, it's going to take quite a long time to do a full wrap tumbler, just one of them. So it's not really something that you're going to want to use for a business or for selling large quantities. But for a hobby use, this is fantastic, and I think you're really gonna like how easy this is to use, and you're gonna get some great results. There's a lot you can do with the rotary attachment for the M2. If I missed anything, if you have any further questions, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to chat with you. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'm here every week with new videos helping you move forward in your creative journey. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.